Because when you said you've been talking about it, you've been bringing it, but bringing it here in front when there have been charrettes and there have been other votes and other things that have happened, that it's kind of been a controversial location over the course of years for many different reasons. But the public buy-in is the important part. I mean, we have so many differing views and opinions, but the only way this city is going to succeed in any way, shape, or form about any topic that comes before us is for us to come together and for us to support it. And not everyone's going to agree. I mean, to say that everyone's going to agree on everything is a fantasy that I have. but it would certainly be nice. But for us to have the majority of support to say, okay, hey, the arts, this is the direction, that this is going to be a great catalyst for us. This is something we can get behind, but we need the public to be a part of it because there are way too many components and way too many different organizations and artists and things that we need someone to reel them in. And the only way we can do it is with you. And that's an important part. And staffing. Oh yeah, and money too. But it's a good start, and we have all the bones for doing that. But now it's a matter of gaining the public's trust to understand that that their wants and needs are a part of that. So that's where I think the concern is up here on the dais from everything that I've heard from everybody today. But I think that the necessity for that space, I mean, I get tickled thinking about the space being a smaller Armory Arts Center. I mean, it really does, because there is a need for people meeting in that space. I think concerns would be something like, so if the CRA is leasing that space, are there other organizations that can still lease that space? Or is it just what the CRA wants to do? I think that's probably a public concern and question. What is the answer to that?
Shared use.
Shared use. So we would still be able to lease the space out?
Absolutely.
Okay. All right. And Commissioner McCoy, sorry, Vice Mayor, I passed over 3 times and going back and forth.
I forgot what I was going to say. I do agree with some of those points. I wanted to go back a little bit, and then I'll come back to some of what you had just mentioned. City Manager, you had mentioned that in terms of redirecting CDBG funds that have been focused on this and committed to it after public discussion in the past, and now we needed to move it to other things. I have to admit to a certain amount of skepticism to that argument, because you mentioned moving it from a project that was on the order of magnitude of the funds that were available. In fact, it seemed like the 100 or 200,000 that was available for that was about the right size to do something with this, and there was community support. Fixing the roads, fixing the sidewalks is a millions of dollar project. Moving 200,000 to it one way or the other is not going to, it's a drop in the bucket. Whereas here, there was a very specific thing that was visible and apparently had community support, and for some reason we didn't move forward on. And concerned, not persuaded by the argument that we needed to move that 200,000 to fix the roads. At that same time, we had approved doing a bunch of sidewalks, and for some reason that didn't happen either. This was a while back. I think it was before you were on, but it didn't seem to happen. Coming back to what you were talking about, Mayor, about promoting the arts and the importance of having community support for it. I completely agree, and in some of our one-on-one discussions, the city manager and I have talked for a while, that I guess the way I see Lake Worth from the various inputs that I get is that there is already a lot of organic, in the sense that nobody really organized it, just happened. There are a lot of artists that come, they like something about our community, they choose to move here, they choose to work here. They've asked for certain things, which we've been very slow at providing. One of the things they've asked is, can you please, we're artists, we don't make big bucks of money for the most part, can you please let us work at home and have people come see my painting at home or whatever, and make some arrangements in our zoning such that that is possible and it doesn't become a problem. That's something that's repeatedly been asked for, and we haven't done anything about it. I don't know why, but we haven't. My concern is that I'm skeptical, and maybe that's just me, but I'm skeptical that arts is something that you can do top-down from government. I don't think government is particularly good at arts. It's just, we're a whole different mentality. Arts tend to be very independent, very creative, very out-of-the-box thinking folks, and they don't worry about budgets and dotting their I's and T's. They're different. That's why they created people. The best that we can do as a government is kind of step back some and make sure that if they say, look, we need certain things and they're moving here anyhow, don't get in the way. and maybe we can do a little bit more to promote it, but I think the point that, if I understood you right, that you made is, on this particular project, is this coming as an upwelling that a bunch of folks in the community who are artists or use the arts in one or another fashion came and said, you know, we need a place to do this?
Yes.
Or was this sort of a top-down, hey, we have an opportunity, let's do this, and hope that somebody will fill it up?
I know that I've spoken with people in the community over the course of 10 years, and I can tell you that that's something that the artists themselves.
Okay, so that's good, that addresses.
That
the-
was one thing, and as to the organizational standpoint of it, first of all, the government shouldn't be overseeing the arts. I'm not looking at it that way. If you notice what I said was philanthropic endeavors, nonprofit organizations. The key to us is to provide a supportive environment for
Yeah,
those
I
types
agree
of
with that.
organizations and foundations to flourish here and help fund those efforts, so we as a city do not have to do that. It's not our job to pay for those things. This is a resource at the Armory Center. If you look into the history of the Armory Arts Center in West Palm Beach,
I'm familiar, yeah.
this is how it started there. So this is a very good thing, and it's also providing a need for that community right now. But in the long-term situation, my vision on that would be to see that, like I said, monies would come in, nonprofits would be formed that would help support people that were in that industry to support that industry, not city government. That shouldn't be our function, but we can provide venues
Some
for
starter-
festivals and things of that nature, or ordinances that help artists. I think Ms. Hunt had, Windishant had talked about artists on the streets and providing artwork and painting on the streets. We can be supportive in those roles, but not actually running it. And back to the one thing that you said, and you know me, I'm always gonna defend my infrastructure. When you say that $250,000 is just a flash of the pan to it, that's a drop in the bucket. That's what they've said for 50+ years. Well, none of those streets got paved, no sidewalks, no fire hydrants. They passed the buck for decade after decade after decade, because probably that amount of money didn't matter very much, and they could get this little object done or this little project done here, and we'll forget that 250, we'll forget that $500,000, we'll forget that 100,000, because it doesn't matter. And the decades went by, and it never got done, and shame on us for ignoring whole sections of our community by not providing the basic levels of service. That's our job as elected officials. It's our job and our responsibility.
I don't disagree.
Shame on us for not doing that.
If I could make one last comment, I'm not comfortable with the process of how we got here. I'm not comfortable that there's been enough time and enough community support and so on, although I appreciate what you said, that you've had people indicating that they support. I'm not at all comfortable with committing to taking out all of the shuffleboard courts. And if I'm looking at the drawings right, that's what I'm seeing. I would be a lot more comfortable if we committed to keeping at least half of them, and maybe put some commitment into helping make sure that shuffleboard is somehow encouraged, that it gets intergenerational things happening, older folks, younger folks, and together, whatever it is, but somehow we get something going on it.
My first thought was family night, shuffleboard night, and get the
Exactly.
families out there making it fun and doing I agree with you about
Yeah.
half the boards. I don't think that would be a bad thing. Sorry, Jerry.
If I could make a comment, during the public meetings regarding the CDBG allocation, a lot of public support was expressed for fixing the interior of the building. However, we could not use CDBG funds for that purpose because we had city staff in the building. This particular application is for interior improvements only. It will be phased if you so agree.
So that it doesn't affect the courts one way or the other.
Not at this point, no.
So we're not committed, even though the drawings, I mean, I guess what's most visible to us in the drawings.
I apologize, that was my error for attaching those. I should have attached what's.
Well, we wanted to show you everything that we had generated at this point with the concept, making it an art center with different venues.
Well, I think the long term on the exterior, I mean, I think there is a compromise here in regards to the exterior side of it. We have time to discuss that further, and this grant really then only represents the interior of the building, which is going to still house the recreation department, is that true?
Yes, it will.
It will still.
In the front office, but my desire is to move them out there entirely. I think that's again, the discussion followed when we talked about the use of government space is the best return on investment of those areas, and having the rec offices in there is probably not the best use.
But for now, though, it
But